would like each of you to give me 3 words to describe each of your parents. 3 words that you think of when you think of your parents.
I can do that quickly.
Okay.
My father, a gentleman, extreme gentleman. Jack just took off his hat when I said that. A gentleman, I don't know what full of integrity, and a wonderful father. My mother, raised in Texas, was something of a steel magnolia. Also a wonderful mother. I had a fantastic childhood. I mean, it was sort of a leave it to Beaver kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents had very, in those days, pretty distinctive roles. My mother cooked and kept the house, and Daddy did the yard and any kind of fixie-up kind of things, and the cars and all. And my mother, well, I have a lot of admiration for her because she was born in Texas. When they married, she moved to Minnesota, which at that time was just total cultural, shock. I mean, it was so different from anything and she hated the cold weather and never really complained about it. So she was a good sport.
Okay, Ken.
My father was quiet, he was brave, and he was politically and socially progressive. He may have been the only person in our hometown that voted for John Kennedy
Wow.
in 1960. Mother, very outspoken, even when she didn't know what she was talking about.
Direct.
Yes, direct. Cared for children very well and loved her family, her extended family. So much so that we spent at least 2 evenings a week with the extended family.
So, Ken, did your parents work?
My father was always employed, and my mother,
What did he do?
father was a retail liquor store clerk.
Mm-hmm.
And mother, when I was in high school, started working. I mean, when earlier she worked, of course, before she was married. But then, when I was in high school, she started selling Stanley Home products. And over time, she did a lot of things. She worked as a physical therapist. I don't know what kind of licensing she had, but she worked in one of the warm water pools in Hot Springs at the arthritis hospital. She worked at the Arlington Hotel, which is somewhat famous.
She was a dog groomer.
Oh yes, she had her dog grooming business. So she had a number of jobs like that.
But only once the kids were older.
Yeah.
All right, Mark, how about your parents?
My mother did not work outside the home, but did tons of volunteer work.
Mm-hmm.
Daddy worked at General Mills his entire career. He was a grain auditor, and that's how he met my mother. He and another man were auditing in Wichita Falls, and the other man must have been from Wichita Falls because he knew Mother, so he set Mother and Daddy up on a date. That's how they met. And he had a number of jobs at General Mills and ended up as the assistant to the president of General Mills.
And his responsibilities were?
Oh gosh, this is interesting. He never really talked, one, about money. That was just never talked about. and really not too much about his job. So really, I think whatever he was asked to do, he did. In fact, he talked about he was either assistant to the CEO or the president, and whichever one they called it at the time. And he said he had two drawers in his desk. One was the CEO drawer and one was the president drawer. And so whenever that title changed, he just pulled out the appropriate drawer and went to work.
So funny. And so did you ever meet Betty Crocker?
Betty Crocker, that's an interesting story. Originally, people would write in questions, and they were being answered by a man. And so they just coined the name Betty Crocker. So there really isn't a Betty Crocker.
What?
No. But there's an image of her which has changed over the years. There's a General Mills Museum in Minneapolis, and it's fairly new. And I went with my sister, and it had all the pictures of the Betty Crockers through the years.
Cool.
Which, yeah, they update her.
But you have a cookbook signed by Betty.
I do. Mercedes Bates was, I think one of the vice presidents, and she signed a cookbook, her name, and then the Betty Crocker. And she was able to sign, and maybe it was a stamp, but she was able to sign it like Betty Crocker.
So Ken, I know, and we're going to wrap this up shortly, but I know you also, I mean, she knew Betty Crocker, but you went to school with somebody else kind of famous. You want to tell us about
Same
him?
initials.
Yeah, same initials.
Yeah, that's
BC.
Yeah, well, I went to school with a guy that won a Grammy, and I used to help him with his music theory work. But that's another story. But you're referring to William Jefferson Clinton, whose name I never knew until he got elected or ran for president. I always thought his name was Billy. And where I come from, that's not unusual to have a name, Billy, or
As your real name.
yeah, your real name.
Not William.
Yeah, and I met Bill primarily because we're both left-handed. Because in those days they had special desks for the left-handers, and they were all on one side of the room. And Bill sat right in front of me in our 8th grade social studies class, taught by dear Mrs. Teague. But I think it's important to note that Bill first impressed me because he wrote a paper about why school desegregation was a good idea. And of course, nobody in my town in Arkansas thought that was a good idea except Bill Clinton.
And that would have been what year?
Probably about 1958, 59.
What grade would you have been in then?
8th grade,
8th grade. Oh.
yeah.
And Ken says that everybody just assumed that he would become president. I mean, it was just
Yeah.
sort of a given.
Oh yeah. It was obvious Bill was going to be president.
So if he sat on the desk beside you, did you ever kind of want to look over his paper, especially during,
No, it
or
was-
vice versa?
He was right in front of me, and because Bill is a very big guy, you couldn't see over his shoulders.
Yeah.
No, but he was one of the smartest guys I ever met.
Uh-huh.
That's for sure. And Bill has always been the kind of person who never seems to forget his friends, where he knew them, even if he just met them and shook their hand one time. He has a remarkable memory.
He comes to every class reunion. There were 2 people at the last reunion, the 50th, that had been to every reunion, and one of them was Bill.
Yeah.
That's
And
cool.
he was very generous to his classmates when he was in office as president, and before that in office as governor of Arkansas, because he would always have class gatherings
At the White House.
at the White House or the governor's mansion. So it was cool.
That is cool. All right, just for documentation purposes, I don't think I got all your parents' names. So Marty, start with your mom and tell us both of your parents' full names, and and Ken, just so we get it on the record.
My mother was Lucille, spelled a little differently, Lucyle, which is Anne's middle name, also my daughter. Lucille Roundtree Dewey. My father was Carter Mitchell Dewey.
And my mother was Peggy Sue Birch, Burch, and my dad was Eugene Dumond Brown.
Great.
And we don't know when he was born because he doesn't have a birth certificate.
He's born at home.
Yeah, and if you could, and it was pretty far out in the boonies.
Yeah.
There wasn't even a family Bible record. He picked his birthday when he got out of the Navy. It was time to become registered for Social Security. He had an aunt. His Aunt Lily says, "I think you were born just before Christmas," but they couldn't, and they were guessing at the year, just based on.
Mm-hmm.
So he picked a birth date,
Cool.
and we don't know if that's the real date or not.
Works as well as any other. Okay. Thank you very much.